Welcome to Combat Zone 360, where we discuss everything military. Today on our show, we have a Air Force veteran and author, Jim Markson. Thank you for joining me today, Jim.
My pleasure.
Yes. So how's everything going today?
Hey, not bad.
Yeah? Well, what I like to do with our guests is, with yourself being a veteran, I like our viewers to really know where our veterans come from, how they grew up, what their lifestyle was growing up. If you could give us a little bit of information.
Our veterans come from every corner of the world and of society. You never know when you're on a subway or something that the guy standing next to you you may look at him and he's something else, and he's a veteran. There's some way you can tell or guess if they have short hair, but the veterans come from just about everywhere for all kinds of reasons. I grew up in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, and I didn't realize it because I never get any thought. My father was a World War I veteran.
Wow. And
when I say my father, not my grandfather, I mean my father. He was born in 1901, and I'm from a second marriage, so he was 46. I was born in 1947. And my mother was older too. She was in her 30s when I was born, and she was from New Jersey, and she came from a very religious Roman Catholic Czechoslovakian family.
Oh, wow.
Had 11 brothers and sisters.
That's a lot.
All of my uncles were in World War II. When I went to grandma's, they had blankets that were from the United States Army. The silverware had the United States Army, things that all of my uncles had taken home with them. And things on the wall from all kinds of units, the armored units, hell on wheels, and bullets that were cut in half, and they made little plaques of them. So I was really imbued surrounded by military, but I didn't know any different.
Yeah.
That's how I grew up. And my brother had joined the reserves, and my older brother, he was in the Army. And then when I graduated high school, I really didn't know what to do with myself. And I was at a party somewhere, and this friend of mine says, I'm going to join the Air Force. Join the Air Force. And Vietnam was going on. This is 1966.
Wow.
And no one ever spoke to me about, Jimmy, you might get drafted. I was totally oblivious to it. And even I think back now, even my father, who was in World War I, he never warned me you might get drafted. And so, guy says he's going to the Air Force and he's become a jet engine mechanic. But that sounded kind of interesting. And somehow or other, I got this job in a butcher store, and the guy's son was an air traffic controller.
Wow.
I said, yeah. He says, yeah, Jimmy, what are you doing here working in a butcher store? He took me out to the Air Traffic Control Center. It's out in Ronkonkoma, Long Island. And he showed me these guys sitting at these radar scopes, and they're talking all of this stuff. And he tells me, if you went in the Air Force, they could teach you how to be an air traffic controller. You do 4 years in the Air Force, you come out, the FAA is going to scoop you up like that. You start at $15,000 a year. I'm in. I go down to the Air Force recruiter. He gives me the test. Oh, Jim, he says, you really scored high in the general aptitude. Yeah, you could get with the air traffic control easy. I'm going.
Wow. Now, did you play any sports in high school or anything coming up?
I played baseball.
Baseball?
Yeah.
Okay.
But not too seriously. I was with a local church. I went to St. Mark's Church in Sheepshead Bay, and they had this baseball team called the Pee-wees. And so I was first baseman on Pee-wees. Other than that, my father had no interest in sports, and I guess because of that, neither did I, even to this day. I watch one game a year. Yeah. That's the Army-Navy game.
There you go.
And I love it.
Oh, yeah. Who do you go for?
I'm in Air Force. So you'd probably go for the underdog, because a few years ago, Navy had won 14 years in a row.
Yeah.
And Army was trying so hard, and eventually they won the last 3 games.
Exactly.
So I was rooting for Army because they were the underdog. But the competition is so intense. I just like to watch that.
Yeah.
Because they're both trying so hard.
Exactly. That's
and they don't get paid.
No.
And it's a different team every year because it's college. You
Yep.
don't have the same, maybe you have the same quarterback for 2 years or something like that, but it's just a great event. The camaraderie, the rivalry between Army, Navy, the whole everything involved, and I love it.
Oh, yeah.
Other than that, to this day, I don't have much interest in sports.
Wow. So you worked at a butcher shop, and then they took you and introduced you to being an air traffic controller.
Yes, the owner's son.
So then you went down.
He was an Air Force vet.
Okay, good. So then you went down and actually raised your hand, joined the Air Force. What job did you end up getting in the Air Force?
They sent me out to Lackland Air Force Base, and I'm in training and everything. And I said, Markson, you have to go for your physical for air traffic controls school. Great. At the time, this is 1966, the Air Force considered air traffic controllers airmen.
Okay.
Like you're going to be a fighter pilot.
Yep. You get your wings and everything, right?
No, but you had to pass, the way I remember it, I could be wrong, you had to pass an airman's physical. You had to be absolutely perfect from head to toe.
Okay.
And I had like 20/40 in my right eye. And they put a big X on my air traffic control school application and put me in security police.
Oh.
And people join the Air Force to learn a trade, a skill, because there's lots of them. It's a toss-up between which is the two worst jobs in the Air Force, security police or cook.
Yeah.
And I was devastated that they put me in security police, and there was no way you're not getting out of it. Wow. Because what happened, Vietnam was going on.
Yeah.
So they have Air Force bases all over Vietnam. They needed security guards, but what it come down to. They needed hundreds and hundreds of security guards posted all around those bases.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. So my first assignment isn't everybody, I wanted to be close to home.
Yeah.
So I got Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which wasn't too far away. But it turned out to be a strategic air command base. They had 10 B-52s on the flight line. Each B-52 had 4 nuclear weapons. That's 40 nuclear bombs were on that flight line.
Yeah.
And they had security. And that was me. And it gets cold out there in January and February.
Oh.
And I'm working midnight shifts, and I'm freezing out there, no matter how much clothes we put on and stuff. And I'm going out of my mind. I said, I can't do this for 4 years. So before we go out on post, they have what they have, guard mount. Everybody stands there, you get inspected, and then they say, okay, tonight we're going to have this, and we need volunteers to go temporary duty to Guam, 3 months. Anybody else? I'm going, yeah. But whenever they would say we need volunteers, I didn't even hear what it was. I would just say, I have to get out of here, I have to get out of here. We need volunteers for Vietnam. And so I volunteered for, what happened, I was in for 2 volunteer jobs, Vietnam, and I think it was Guam or Okinawa. All right, so I'm in the barracks, and they say, Markson, you have to go to the dispensary and get your shots, your cholera shot, all of these shots that you have to go before you're going to either Okinawa or Vietnam. So I'm at the dispensary, and I'm getting my smallpox shot or whatever the heck it is, and they say, oh, wait a minute, we have you going to Okinawa and Vietnam. So I said to them, if I go to Vietnam, does that mean I don't have to? Okinawa was TDY. That means after 3 months I'm coming back, temporary duty. I said, if I go to Vietnam, does that mean I don't have to come back here? They said, yeah. And they're looking at me, what, are you crazy?
Yeah.
I had to get out of there. It was just so, you're freezing out there at 3 o'clock in the morning.
So you'd rather go to a combat zone, Vietnam, do all that? Wow.
And I met more than one guy that did the same thing I did to get out of the strategic. It was such a strict environment.
Yeah.
It was then, hey, they have nuclear bombs out on that flight line.
No, exactly.
So looking back at it, it couldn't be anything less. You can't be playing around out there. Yeah. But I just couldn't take it. And I would see, I was only there maybe 6 months, which is pretty quick to get out of a SAC base. I would see the guys that had been there for like 3 years, And then they'd get their orders for Vietnam in the 4th year anyway. So I said, I'm not going to freeze to death for 3 years, only to have to go to Vietnam anyway.
Exactly.
I wanted to get it over early, let's put it that way. And I wanted to get out of there. And all things considered, I really, the way things turned out, I don't have any regrets.
Good. So how many years did you do in the Air Force?
4.
4 years? Right. So after your 4 years, you ended up getting out?
Yes.
What was that deciding factor that had you get out of the Air Force?
Okay, so after Vietnam, I really lucked out, and I got stationed in a tactical fighter base in Holland.
Okay.
It was paradise. It was a tiny base, 800 guys. The story goes is that after World War II, the Americans, the British, I think the Canadians, they pushed the Germans out of Holland really quick, too quick for the Queen. And she said, "Wait a minute, I want somebody to stay here." They wanted some kind of military presence, so they gave her an Air Force base where we had 2 fighter planes on alert. We were a fighter interceptor squadron.
Yeah.
And so I wound up stationed in Holland, and I'm loving it. I mean, it was just it was totally different from Strategic Air Command. It couldn't be more lax. The Dutch people loved us. They never forgot what happened in World War II. And so I'm ready to get out after 4 years, and they call me in for my re-enlistment interview. And they're telling me I'm really good, security, police, quality. And so I said, well, could I stay here another 4 years? And they say to me, oh, wait a minute, you were in Vietnam, and you went concurrent overseas to Europe, that you've been out of the country for over 3 years. He says, your next assignment has to be a stateside one. And then you can put in for Europe, which is, I didn't want to risk being stationed at a missile silo in North Dakota, where everybody else is underground, nice and warm, except the security policeman.
Exactly.
He's standing outside there freezing. Oh. And so I got out.
Wow. Now, with that, I mean, that was a good deciding factor. They couldn't put that in your contract saying afterwards
back
you
then,
can come
there were no
straight
contracts.
There were really?
There were no contracts, no.
Oh, wow. I mean, how did it happen? Could you tell us a little bit about it? Like, when you enlisted...
They just told me, oh, yeah, you're going to get air traffic control school.
Yeah.
There was no guarantee.
Yeah.
I did. They had planned, they sent me for the physical, but there was no guarantee. And in fact, I had 2 other choices that were not security police. It was some kind of a electronic countermeasures or something like that. It was like a radar position where you're going to watch for incoming missiles or something like that. And another one was some kind of airborne observer. Oh, no. They needed security police, and that's where they put me. There were no contracts back then.
Wow, so
it was luck.
Yeah, so when they were looking at putting you in for another 4 years, would you have signed a contract to stay in for another 4 years?
I just would have re-enlisted. I just would have re-enlisted. We didn't have a contract, and I would have been security police for another 4 more years. But I would have stayed in Holland as security police. It was paradise.
Wow. And I want to go back to your father a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, World War I, that's amazing. I know you told us a little bit about him before the show. Could you go over that and actually tell our viewers the story of, your father? Because that's an amazing story.
My father was born in 1901. In fact, and he was born in Canada.
Wow. And
they immigrated to Manhattan with a place called Hell's Kitchen on the Upper West Side.
Yes.
Around 1911, something like that. So he came to the United States when he was about 10. Just as the story goes. And then he wound up, he didn't get along with his father. And he ran away from home when he was like 15, almost 16. And he joined the Army.
Yeah.
World War I's going on. And they put him in the infantry. And he's over there in France or Belgium, and he's in the trenches. And he gets wounded twice. And apparently he had written a letter home to his brothers and sisters, not thinking that his mother also lives there. And his mother reads the letter, finds out he's in the army in Europe.
Yeah.
And she contacts the army somehow, and they sent him back to Virginia. I have the papers. It's just kind of hilarious now. I still have them.
Yeah.
And he says he was given a general discharge for misrepresentation of age, and they put him out with a general discharge.
After 2 Purple Hearts.
He never got them either.
Really?
Right. And later on, he was very involved in the American Legion. He knew a lot of politicians. I think till the day he died, he was trying to get those Purple Hearts. Wow. Never did. I tried to get them. The records burned in St. Louis. We have nothing, none of this, none of that. It's not happening.
Yeah.
You know, there's no records of it.
It's
just my word and his word,
and
it just never happened. But he was always pro-army, pro-military. The army will make a man out of you. I remember hearing him say, and I don't know if we're allowed to curse here. It's not really a curse.
Yeah.
But I remember one time when I was like 16. It was the middle of the winter, and I'm in the car, and he's taking me somewhere. And so back then, it took a while for the heat to come on. And so he just started up the car, and I'm freezing, and I'm trying to get the heat to come on. And it's not going to come on until the engine warms up. And he looked at me, he goes, when I was your age, I had a rifle in my hand and a bayonet on my side, and I wasn't in my pants either.
Wow.
And you know what? He wasn't.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
I mean, it was true. It's true. I had a rifle in my hand, a bayonet on my side.
That's
and
amazing.
I wasn't in my pants.
That's amazing.
Other than that, I don't remember him ever saying anything about being in the war. He had this dent in his head, but he always had it, you know. I didn't know, my father's got a dent in his head from World War I, from a piece of German shrapnel. And he just was a great guy.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. That is. I love it because you don't hear about that. My father actually, during the Vietnam era, came down from Canada and joined the Marines. You know, so
wait a minute. So he was Canadian?
Yeah. My mom and dad are both Canadian.
Wow, small world.
Oh yeah, so it's pretty. He's from Edmonton area. She's from Vancouver area.
I don't even know. I think it was Ontario, but
yeah,
where we lived. They had immigrated from Europe. Wow. His mother and father.
Okay.
And wound up in Canada, and apparently they wanted to come to the United States, but they couldn't. So Canada would take them. Yeah. So they went to Canada, and as soon as they could come, I don't know if they came. They must have come legally, but they came to the United States as soon as they could. So he came to the United States. He was like 10 or 11.
Wow.
So I don't call him Canadian. You know, he lived there he was a kid living in Canada.
Exactly. Now I know that you, in your Vietnam experience, you ended up writing a book.
Yes, I did.
Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Absolutely.
Because I really like the concept that you went with on that.
Well, my ex-wife, we were married for 15 years. Mm-hmm. Her father was in the 101st Airborne in World War II, and he was a country boy from Indiana, and his first baptism to combat was the D-Day invasion. He was on the first wave of paratroopers that went into Nazi-occupied France at midnight in the dark. And that's his first baptism into combat. And he was wounded twice, Purple Heart, the Battle of the Bulge, a D-Day invasion, the Battle of the Bulge. And he was a John Wayne guy, too. He was a big guy, big, deep voice. I was intimidated by the guy. And even though I was a Vietnam vet, you know, I was still...
Yeah.
And he passed on. And unknown to everybody, he'd written home a whole bunch of letters to his future wife, my ex-wife's future mother. Mm-hmm. And so she got a hold of these letters and transcribed them into a book and everything else she knew about her father and her mother and grandmother. And she put him into a book.
Yeah.
It's called "Comes a Soldier's Whisper,"
Wow.
because he was dead. And so he wrote these letters. And I'm reading these letters, and some of them were like, just like mine.
Yeah.
The same stuff, almost the same exact words. And I knew him personally, so I got more out of the book.
Exactly.
And then I said to her, I wrote home 62 letters to my mother. He says, "Do you still have them?" I said, "Yeah." And I hadn't even read them. I hadn't looked at them in 40-something years. I just had them in this Ziploc bag. And I went through them one by one. And she transcribed every single one of them. And after, like, the first letter, I got into Saigon. It took us 36 hours to get here. We landed in Honolulu, Johnston Island, the Philippines, And then I would write about... that was 1920 when I wrote those letters. Mm-hmm. So it's silly stuff like I'm asking, where's the cheese whiz? I didn't get the cheese whiz. What happened to the cheese whiz? And I'm in Vietnam. And they would send me the cheese whiz. Yeah. And so I write. You read the letter of what I wrote then as a 19-20-year-old in Vietnam, and then I comment on the letter.
Wow.
And then as the letters, as I'm there more and I become more and more salty and I'm moving around from one base to another base and this happens and that happens. And I really had it made as far as being in Vietnam. I was security police. I found, after these 2 bases, I was at a place called Phu Cat, which was in the middle of nowhere, and things were kind of crude, but compared to infantry guy, it was luxury. Yeah. And then I went to another place called Ben Hoa, which is a little kind of crude. Then I went to Saigon Airport. It was almost like being in the States. Wow. We had everything. If it was in Vietnam, it was in Saigon. If you wanted the most craziest thing or most luxurious thing, you were going to find it in Saigon, nowhere else.
Yeah,
we had real milk. Our water didn't look like apple juice, the color of apple juice. We had clear water. We had hot water showers. Things like that. Yeah, we had toilets that flushed. So we were living in a lap of luxury.
I didn't even have that in Iraq.
And I knew I had it made, but I always worked at night. Because that's when the Air Force bases would usually get attacked, when it was dark. Vietnam, the dark, unlike now, we didn't have all that night vision and stuff. When it got dark. And they knew it. They loved the dark. Yeah. So I'm in Saigon, and it'd always be out in the distance, these artillery blasts, air bursts, I think they called them. Artillery rounds that would explode just above.
Yeah. So the shrapnel comes down.
Yes.
Yep.
But they would always be way out there, and you'd barely hear the explosion, but you'd see the flash. Mm-hmm. And there'd be tracer rounds here or there, or there'd be a gunship, a Huey gunship helicopter out there that would be shooting some tracer rounds. Some tracer rounds would come up. But nothing happened at Saigon. And it was almost like, oh boy, nothing happens here. I wanted to see some action. Yeah. And in fact, I ran into 2 friends of mine from Sheepshead Bay.
Oh, wow.
And both of them were door gunners on Hueys. Yeah. And one of them was a door gunner on a gunship. And so they say, "Hey, Jack, can you get me up on a flight, on a mission?" He says, "You know how to shoot an M60?" I said, "Yeah." So he says, "Look, tomorrow morning or something like that, be out on a flight line with a fatigue shirt with no insignia on there, no United States Air Force, no nothing.
Yeah.
And I'll get you. I'll get you on." So he was the crew chief of the helicopter. So the captain comes out, and he was a captain in the Army, and he's the pilot. And it was a maintenance flight. We were going to fly from Ben Hoa to Saigon, but I was going to be able to fly as the gunner.
Yeah.
And so he even let my friend Jack fly as co-pilot.
Wow.
He knew they got along great.
Yeah.
You know, they knew each other very well. And so yeah, we got a ride, and then I'm sitting in the doorway. You know, there's no doors. Sitting in the doorway of this Huey gunship with a M60 in my hand. We flew from Benoit to Saigon and had some work done on the helicopter, and then we flew back. But it wasn't a mission. But he was going to try and get me on a mission, but it never happened. And in a way, I'm glad it didn't.
Yeah, no, I tell everybody, especially when they came back, came to Iraq and, or wants to go to Iraq. When I talk to soldiers now, they're like, I want to go, I want to fight, and I would tell them, be careful what you wish for, you know.
That's what happens next. I'm scheduled to leave March 14th.
Okay.
And I'm at Saigon, where nothing happens. And on January 31st, 1968, was the beginning of the Tet Offensive.
Yes.
And it's about 4:30 in the morning. The sun's going to come up in a couple hours.
Yeah.
And somebody starts shooting into the base on the northeast corner with a machine gun.
Wow.
And they're not letting up. This isn't just a, dot, 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 and they run.
Yeah.
No. They're steady firing. They were firing at the POL area where they keep the fuel, the petroleum, oil, and lubricants. I think POL. They were trying to set the fuel tanks
ablaze.
on fire.
Yeah.
And I'm watching this because, I'm in the center of the base and I can see what's going on. And then we had these cargo planes that would take off.
Yeah.
There was, and we had a guy that was up on a water tower, an Air Force guy, and he would always broadcast, okay, World Airways so-and-so is getting ready to take off, just to let everybody know. And this World Airways is taking off. There's still guys still shooting down at the other end of the base. And when he lifts off the west end of the base, the sky lit up with tracer rounds. They tried to shoot him down. And I'm doing the math real quick. For every tracer round that's going up in the sky, I know that there's a guy on the ground down there.
Yeah.
And that was when they started. They started to attack the base, and they blew right through a security police bunker. They overran it. I read the after action battle report like 25 years later.
Yeah.
And they overran the security police machine gun bunker that was out there. They had 10 guys on it, 5 security police, 5 South Vietnamese military police. But they held them off for 20 minutes. And in that 20 minutes, we had been put on condition red the night before. Nothing was going on. But they put us in condition red. So we had guys sleeping with their boots on, literally, in these, what they call quick reaction. We had quick reaction teams. And they sent the quick reaction teams out there, and they held them. They held the attack until the sun came up. And in the after action battle report, there was 3,500. There was 7 reinforced battalions of North Vietnamese regulars and Viet Cong guerrillas that attacked Saigon Air Force Base.
Well, and Jim, I do want to invite you back for some other, interviews, because I know you have a lot of great stories. But right now we gotta, move on. Yeah, but that's I can't wait for the future. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Yes, and thank you for tuning in. And until next time, make sure you thank a veteran.